Hi, and welcome to Behind the Headlines with the Times of Israel. I'm Amanda Borshaldan, and this week we're speaking with Dr. Micah Goodman. Dr. Micah Goodman is a PhD in philosophy and is basically put on this earth so that parents who are afraid that their kids are going to go nowhere after learning philosophy will actually have a career. He's a best-selling author of some half-dozen books. He is an international speaker. He's an educator and the president of the Beit Midrash Yisraeli in Prat, which is where young Israelis, secular religious, come together and basically learn to make the world a better place. So Micha, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm really happy to be here with you.
I, of course, didn't mention that you're also a senior fellow at Hartman, and you do have other different postings in lecturer positions, all the time changing, so I won't even get into that at this point. So again, thank you so much. Now, your most recently best-selling book was Catch 67, which delves into the philosophy of the political situation here in Israel, and specifically the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. After your next book that's coming out in English it's called The Wandering Jew, where again, you are delving into these somewhat extremes of society and coming up with philosophical even results and an overview. I've not been able to read that book yet since it comes out only in November. Can you give us a bit of a sneak preview, a little bit?
Yes, I'm trying to do the same project I did in Catch 67 to the right and the left. I'm trying to do to religion and secularism, which means in Catch 67, I tried to listen with empathy to the best arguments of the Israeli political right and articulate them in a persuasive way. And then to listen to the best arguments of the political left and to put them forward in the most persuasive way. So we could see that there's philosophy behind politics, and it's deep and interesting and even thrilling. And to see that all sides understood something and got something right. Amanda, that's the same project I'm doing with secularism, even atheism and religion, to see the best in secularism. What are the best ideologies? What are the best arguments? What are the best systems and methods of living that secularism, Israeli secularism, produced? And I do the same project for religion in Israel. Why is religion in Israel very exciting, very interesting? What are the best arguments for religion in Israel? So I try to put forward to all my readers to try to understand the Israeli religious secular divide, like I did in Catch 67 to politics, this time to religion.
Are you finding that, like what you found in Catch 67, that there's some kind of yin yang concept here, that not the religious aren't only religious, there's some black spot of secularism, and the seculars aren't only secular, there's the white spot of religion, or vice versa? Are you finding that?
I love the metaphor of yin yang. I think it's a very deep and serious metaphor, in the sense that in the yin and the yang, so the white has a dark spot in it, the yin has yang, and the yang has yin in it, and they both need each other. And religion, at its best, it educates our mind to realize that life is more than just our own life. What I personally want from life, that's not the most important part of my life, because I belong to something bigger and greater than myself. The best of secularism is the impulse of individualism, that I am unique, that I am important, that I have an important story to tell, that I have an important, unique life to live. The question is between individualism and self-actualizing on the one hand, and belonging to something bigger than yourself on the other hand. That is the yin and yang of life. And religion is very good in the story of belonging. And secularism was very good in the story of self-actualizing. And we need them both. We need to live the best lives that we can live, but in service of something greater than our life. And in that sense, yes, there is a yin and yang here. There are not opposites that will prevail by destroying each other, but only by putting them together. So I love the image of yin and yang, both for right and left, and for religion and secularism.
It's interesting to think about this yin and yang, especially when we're seeing increasingly polarized societies. I'll give you just an anecdote. I was at my dad's wedding in the United States about 2 years ago, and it was a very small celebration. We were only one table after the wedding, and the table was split in half, and it became this vicious argument at my dad's wedding between Trump supporters and Trump mamash really not supporters. And how are you seeing this polarization as well, as much as I am?
Yes. So my book, Casting 7, is coming out in Portuguese in Brazil. It's out already. And so I've been speaking to, so we're doing an event in Portuguese, and they asked me to discuss the issue of polarization because Brazil is more polarized than ever. And so is Poland, and so is Hungary. And we know our British friends, they're so polarized today, and America is polarized, and Israel is polarized. Robert Putnam from Harvard. So he argues that the levels of polarization in the US today are higher than they were the entire 20th century.
20th century, okay. Does he compare it to, say, the Civil War period? Because to me, it seems like we're going back.
The last time America reached such high levels of polarization was in the 1860s. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean America is entering civil war, but it does mean that, polarization is a very unique, specific brand of hatred. Is when I hate someone because of their political worldview. And many people say today they would not want their sons and daughters marry someone with the opposite political worldview. Like if you're conservative, you won't want your son to marry a liberal or a Democrat, and vice versa. You won't want your daughter to marry, my daughter will never marry a Republican. So we have those statements going up, the willingness to cooperation between both sides going down, seeing the worst in each other's arguments, seeing the worst in each other's personalities. So that's something that's according to Robert Putnam, it's now almost the worst it has ever been in the United States of America. So that's polarization is a very serious problem. And in a very deep sense, polarization is a reflection of collapse in curiosity. Because when you are a liberal in a polarized world, you lose your curiosity about conservative worldviews. You don't listen to lectures by Republicans. You don't listen to podcasts by conservatives. You don't read books written by right-wingers. Like there's a whole world that you lose your curiosity about because you already know what you think about them and what they think and what they say. So if you're a liberal, you have a tendency to read books by liberals, podcasts by liberals, go to lectures by left-wingers. You're trapped, your intellectual world is trapped in your political world. Oh, and the same thing for the right, obviously. If you're a right-winger today, you love going to lectures of right-wingers. There's nothing funner than being a right-winger and listen to a podcast that mocks left-wingers. That's what we do. We're trapped. Instead of our intellectual worlds liberating us from our political worlds, our intellectual worlds are trapped within our political worlds. So it's a great loss of curiosity. A polarized world is a world that lost its curiosity. Because curiosity at its best, Amanda, what it does, it cracks our world. It opens our world. And today, our intellectual world is shrinking into the size of our political worldview.
That's so counterintuitive if you think that everyone holds the whole world in their hand today with their smartphone and can increasingly research anything basically in any language, and you can have it translated to whatever language you want as well. Why would we become increasingly clannish, increasingly narrow-minded when we have broader and broader horizons to explore?
So Tim Wu from Columbia has a great answer to this. He says, in order to understand these things, we have, the whole world is open to us. So why aren't we opening to the world, like you're asking? So Tim Wu from Columbia said, to understand this, we have to understand the business model behind these amazing machines. And the business model is the attention business, Amanda, the attention business. What does Facebook make money off? What does Twitter make money off? They make money off selling our eyeballs, selling our focused attention, and using our attention to promote products. and to target specific products, specific advertisements to our eyes. So the more minutes they have of our attention, the more money they make. So the algorithm that is designed to grab our attention, and as Tim Wu says, today, the attention industry is worth much more money than the oil industry. So just think about it this way, Amanda. If oil has value, we're going to develop crazy technologies to take oil out of the ground. Now, and this is new, that attention has so much value. People are developing very serious technologies to get more attention out of our mind. It's the new oil. And what are the technologies to grab our attention? So we all have a weakness, and it's a universal weakness. And I love human weaknesses. It's about who we are. It's our nature. It is a weakness called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is so interesting. One of the aspects of confirmation bias is that we love our own opinions. We love listening to other people saying out loud what we already think. It gives us a high. When right-wingers hear a right-winger lecture, they feel excited. When left-wingers see a video mocking right-wingers, we love information that confirms what we already think. And that's a weakness we all have, myself also. The thing is, the algorithm of Facebook is aware of this weakness, of this bias, which is an aspect of confirmation bias. And what's the business model of Facebook? They want to grab our attention. So they know if they'll confront me with a worldview that challenges my worldview, I won't stay there. They want my attention. So they'll always shoot into my news feed different ideas, which are different brands of what I already think. Because guess what? The algorithm knows what I think and understands me maybe in a deeper way that I understand myself. And it'll always give back to me different versions of my own worldview, of my own ideology. And as a result, what happens to many people on Facebook is the following paradox, Amanda. They think they're exposed to the world, but they really are exposed to their own world. And what happens is very dangerous. It's because when you have your own views shot back to you in different versions again and again and again, that is a brainwashing. The principle of brainwashing is repetition. But this is an interesting form of brainwashing. We're not taking an outside message, repeating it again and again until it becomes my worldview. No, it's taking my worldview, repeating it back to me again and again. It is auto-propaganda. I'm brainwashing myself to believe with absolute certainty that I am right. And as a result, when I meet someone that is brainwashed by their own worldviews, we can't understand each other. We can't appreciate each other. And as a result, we are polarized. That is a paradox of our time. Facebook, social media, which its purpose was to connect people, is separating between us.
Wow, okay, that's horrible and horrific and slightly paranoid sounding, but probably quite
Sorry.
Makes me want to take instead of breadcrumbs.
Yeah, we didn't come here to have fun.
Sorry? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm saying this is not fun to realize this.
No, and we should also
realize all the paradoxes.
Yeah, throw our phones into the river instead of breadcrumbs for the new year. But it's chilling to think about what you're saying, and I can only imagine when you extrapolate it times, millions and billions of people who are becoming perhaps even more paranoid and psychotic in their own echo chamber, their own personal echo chamber, that this can only lead to a really depressing society, which is pretty much what we're seeing right now, regardless of coronavirus. Don't even get us started with coronavirus.
Yes. So where you're taking us, Amanda, is political polarization is a very big problem. We should be speaking about this a lot. I mean, there's global warming, which is a big problem. This is up there. Global warming is threatening our planet. Political polarization is threatening our democracies. Our democracy is contaminated by political polarization. But you're taking us to a third problem. It's up there with global warming and polarization. And that is, there is what Jean Twenge calls a mental health crisis throughout Western civilization. Ever since 2010, 2011-ish, Depression is up more than 30% among teens. Probably not only among teens, but there's a lot of data about teens. Anxiety is up 30%. Suicide rates around for female teens is up more than 50%. We're talking about a mental health crisis where the leading problems are anxiety and depression. So one has to ask him or herself, is it a coincidence at the same time that we have a political crisis, we're having an emotional crisis? Or is it interesting that our democracies are contaminated at the same time that planet Earth is contaminated at the same time that it seems like our whole emotional world is becoming weaker and weaker, and in some way you could call it contaminated. And these are pandemics that began before Corona, like you said, Amanda. So at a time now, one of the driving forces of anxiety and depression is a strong sense of loneliness. It's not the only force driving anxiety and depression, but it's a main one, Amanda, which takes us back to the greatest paradoxes of our time. How is it in a world that we're more connected to each other than we ever were in the past, people feel more lonely than they ever did? How is that possible? How's that possible? And this takes us to another weakness of the whole social media, of technology, and that it gives you an illusion of connection, but it makes you feel isolated and lonely. How's that? It's kind of because, Amanda, our need for human beings have a craving for connection. We have a need. This is probably designed by millions of years of evolution, where we were living in close knits of 40, 50, 60 people. And that's how our emotional system was designed and created, living in very small tribes. And that's what we are. We're craving for connection. And the connection that we're craving is only implemented by real face-to-face conversations, when people can be present with each other, completely seen, even smell each other, have that intensity that happens when people are close to each other. Oh, and something else. That kind of connection is the connection that we're craving, and that's the connection that we're so scared of, because that connection is messy. I might be rejected. I might be embarrassed. I might not say what I wanted to say the right way. So we crave it, and also we're terrified from it. This is how Sherry Turkle describes connection. What you crave, what you desire, you're also very terrified of. And the magic of WhatsApp is that we think we get the best of both worlds. On the one hand, I have connection. On the other hand, I have much less anxiety. Because let's say if I suddenly start sweating because nobody will see it. If I start blushing, no one will know. I'm protected. I'm hiding. Oh, and I always get the words out right. You know why? Because I can edit myself and edit myself again. So I have control over communication. So it's the perfect world, right? We get to have communication without the messiness of communication. And as Sherry Turkle puts it, we fall in love with the edited versions of ourselves. I love that line, the edited versions of ourselves. But here's a problem, Amanda, as Sherry Turkle writes and observes, that's not connection. The connection we're craving, the kind of connection that we need, the kind of connection that fulfills our emotional needs is the messy kind. Is the kind that you could screw up, the kind that you can bluff, the kind that you can't control. That kind of connection that we're afraid of, that's what we need, and that's what we don't have. We have less and less of in this world. So connecting, this sterile connection, this fearless connection, this priceless connection is also connection with much less value. It's kind of like, as Carl Newpart called it, junk food connection. Mm-hmm. You're starving because we have a need for nutrition, and you eat junk food, which means you're hungry, so it takes you to food, but it's a kind of food that doesn't serve what you were really hungry for. We're hungry for connection. we go to Facebook and people say after 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours in Facebook, they feel more lonely than they were when they entered. So something big happens in 2010. Our conversations move to cyberspace. Our conversation moves to social media. And like 10 years later, we realize there is a political crisis and an emotional crisis. Carl Neupelt has an interesting metaphor for this. I was speaking about junk food. In the middle of the 20th century, there was a small revolution, the fast food revolution. And people were so excited about the fast food revolution because we get to have three things thanks to fast food. One, very yummy food. I mean, I love fast food. It's good. When it's in your mouth, you feel happy. That's one. Two, it's cheap. And three, you don't wait in line. So you save time, you save money, and it's good. What's wrong with fast food? And people were speaking about this. Well, this is such a good. And then like 10 years later, suddenly there's a crisis. There's a health crisis of, how do you say, sukeret? Of diabetes and obesity and all these, things are dangerous things. So people realize, oh, this is a real serious problem. We didn't see the unintended consequences of fast food. Well, now we entered an interesting revolution of fast information. Isn't that a good line? Fast information, parallel to fast food. And we think, wow, it's great. We get a lot of information very quickly, very easily. 10 years later, we start realizing all the unintended consequences of fast information. And the unintended consequences of fast food was obesity and diabetes and all these physical issues of physical health. So the health of our democracies and the health of our psychology is now being threatened by a fast information revolution. So something big is happening in the world where before Yom Kippur, we have to realize, okay, if we want to save our democracies, we also want to save our mental, our emotions, we have to start having a very serious conversation about social media, about smartphones, about screens, about the importance of real face-to-face communication.
I keep thinking about, as you're talking about the rabbi who is in a cave for years and years. I'm going to get this wrong. And he was only eating carob, I think. And when he got out of the cave, all of a sudden he had these laser eyes because he could not handle being with proper society. And so he just slashed and burned everyone who got in his way. And he had to get back into the cave. You know the story much better than I do. But now we're kind of in our own little caves, one with the fast information that we have in our pockets at all times, but now even more so with the coronavirus. My little brother in Indianapolis only goes out for work and goes back home. He is in his cave most of the time. There's so many people like him in the world right now who are just, scared of this thing that we can't see, but really affects each one of us so deeply. So tell us how we can get out of our caves without slashing and burning, laser eyes, and without falling for the fast information revolution.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure what the answers are. Amanda, I'm much better at asking the questions.
Did I call the wrong person here? No.
That's right. Yeah, but we have to have a real conversation about this. We have to have. But I think now we're after Rosh Hashanah and before Yom Kippur, and obviously all these great questions we're asking. We're in a political crisis. We're in an emotional crisis. There's a climate crisis. So much is happening, and we're scared. And is there anything that Jewish wisdom could teach us about, how do you deal in times of uncertainty?
Yes, uncertainty politically, also because of our borders and our leadership, and everything is just basically uncertain.
Now, all these problems are deeply connected to each other because polarization is caused by tribalism. Now, tribalism is belonging to a tribe of man in the sense of tribalism, not tribe is the opposite of belonging to a community. A tribe, a mob on social media, a tribe I belong to, that creates a sense of polarization, that we're right, that they're wrong. One day, everybody will realize they're wrong, we're right. That strong sense of certainty designed by algorithms. So those tribes unite people, but what unites them is their shared hate. What unites communities, Amanda, is our shared love. Now, people are lonely, more lonely than before, and they're searching for connection, and they find it in political tribes. So a political tribe is kind of like a response, an answer, an antidote to loneliness, but it's the wrong antidote. We want to connect to something, we connect to a tribe, and what unites us is our shared hate. For right-wingers, for left-wingers, for Trump supporters, for people who are against Trump. You know, we all have our political tribe that's defined by what we are not and what we hate. Community is belonging to a group that what puts you together is your shared caring, your shared interests, your shared love. The answer to loneliness is not a political tribe, it's a community. And this is something that our tradition understood and always understood. Community is what liberates us from tribalism and from loneliness. Community is a Jewish answer to the two problems of the 21st century. Yes, we should belong to groups, but the groups that we belong to that liberate us from loneliness and give meaning to our life are not political tribes, are people that the best definition of a community is a group of people that are witnessing each other's life. I think that's a great, Yuval Noah Harari has like a takeoff on this. He says it's a group of people that gossip about each other. I think it's not bad. If you belong to a group, that people are so curious about each other, they want to share information about each other, that is interesting. That means you are seen by this group and you see other people. But I think a more elegant definition is a group of people that are witnessing each other's life. That's where I'm not anonymous. And that's where I liberate other people from the sense that they are anonymous, that we're all seen because we all see and we're witnessing each other's life. And that is Jewish answer to the problem of loneliness and to the problem of polarization. So this is something I think we should start speaking about again and promoting again and cultivating again. Community, belonging to community. And community also liberates you from the illusion that what you want is the most important part of your life. There is something more important than you. And that is a group you belong to, that you're witnessing. So, but here's something that belonging to a community, being a part of a community, which brings the best out of life, it can't do for you. It can't redeem uncertainty. It can't. It does something else. It helps you accept uncertainty. And this is, I think, the most important transformation that I think we should all try to go through. I'm not crazy, by the way, Amanda, about saying Shana Tova to each other. Shana Tova Metuka. May you everything you want become a reality. You know why? Because we all know it's not going to happen. We all know that this year, what?
It's been a year already, and we look forward or not to another one quite similar. So yes.
That's right. Bad things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't, it's because we can't control life, but we live in it and we can't control the world and we can't control reality. And one of the reasons why people are suffering now is that they can't accept uncertainty. I mean, human beings always had a problem with uncertainty. But today, more than before, we can't accept uncertainty. And that is because we live in a world where we all, it's scary, but it always was scary.
Yeah.
But in the past, it was easier for us to accept the fact that we can't control reality. Mm-hmm. But here, because we have such great illusions of control, we press a button and so much happens. Because our mind is trained to believe by technology that we can control everything, it's harder for us to accept that we really control nothing. We control nothing. Right? I can control the temperature of the room because there's an air conditioning, but I can't really control the health of people that I love. I can't have no control over the global economy, which is going to change my life and the lives of people that I love. We're really living in a world we can't control. And the more we control, we have an illusion of control, the harder it is to accept the fact that we don't control. So I think the best way to think about the new year is not to hope for certainty, but it's to train our minds to accept uncertainty. That is how we have to turn it around. I had a conversation with a Hindu philosopher about 2 years ago. And I told him that in Rosh Hashanah, we eat an apple with honey, hoping we'll have a sweet year. And he said that he belongs to a tradition that in their Rosh Hashanah, in their beginning of the year, they always eat something very bitter and something very sweet. Because both are going to happen this year, we have to accept both. And I thought that is so interesting. We have to learn not to wish the world would be as we wish, but to accept the world as it is. I was thinking, hey, maybe we eat bitterness, we eat the maror in Pesach, right? In Pesach, which is also Rosh Hashanah. It's the beginning of the biblical year. So Pesach plus Rosh Hashanah, we have the maror and the dvash. That's how we should be thinking about it. Not wishing that the world will be exactly the way we want it to be, but training our minds, accepting the world the way it is, even when it's not exactly the way you want it and need it to be. This is what Alan Watts called the wisdom of insecurity. And you know how there's all the self-help books, right? How to become a millionaire in 5 steps, how to think like rich people, how to become like Western civilization has developed wisdom of security, the wisdom, the guidance of how to become successful, how to get what you want. Eastern traditions have a different wisdom. How to accept a reality where you don't get what you want. Alan Watts calls it the wisdom of insecurity. You started, Amanda, with speaking about yin and yang, right? Maybe this is a very important message at the beginning of the new year, because Western civilization is about changing the world and being effective in changing the world and having more control and more influence. And Eastern traditions are the other way around. It's not about, in Eastern traditions, there is a wisdom that it's not about what you experience, it's only about how you experience. It's not about what happens, it's only about how you experience what happens. And the more accepting you are, the more you can accept the fact that that you don't get what you want, the happier you are. Now, do we want to live in an Eastern world where there's no ambition? Where ambition is to practice what Tara Bach calls radical acceptance, completely surrendering and accepting reality? Or do we want to live in a Western world where we're always ambitious and always trying to control and never accepting a world that we can't control? Where's the yin and yang here? And as Jewish tradition, I think this is probably one of the most greatest challenges of Jewish tradition, of putting these ideas together, of living in the world, on the one hand, that we do believe in tikkun olam. We do believe in having an ambition, trying to make a world a better place, but also absorbing the wisdom of insecurity, understanding that not everything is under our control, and accepting the fact that the world is beyond our ability to design it in a way that it serves everything that we want. That's the interesting yin and yang here. Trying to change the world and accepting the fact that the world doesn't always change. That is, I think, the most interesting project of Judaism in the 21st century.
So instead of wishing you a happy new year, a good new year, I'm going to wish you a new year in which you walk that fine line of balance and seek a never-ending balance in the tree pose of your desire, whether it be Etz Chaim Hi or some kind of Eastern tradition. Micha, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Amanda. This was so interesting. Toda rabba. Shana tova.
Shana tova.